18 months after humanity's departure, the galaxy was dying. Not all at once, but slowly, like a machine grinding itself to pieces. In the council chambers, what remained of galactic leadership met in emergency session. The reports grew worse each week. Fleet Commander Crix delivered the military briefing. His voice was hollow with exhaustion. The Krell Dominion and Silicate Confederacy are now in open warfare. 23 planets have been destroyed. Civilian casualties exceed 2 billion. Neither side will accept peace negotiations. Why not? Chancellor Vexthar asked, though he sounded like he already knew. There is no one they trust to mediate, Crix said simply. Every negotiator we send is accused of taking sides. The humans could walk into any conflict and both sides would listen. We do not have that gift. Medical Officer Pelra gave the next report. Her tentacles drooped with grief. The plague has returned. Not just the Andromeda strain, but 5 others we thought were extinct. Without human pharmaceutical techniques, we cannot produce effective treatments. This month alone, we lost 15 million lives across 7 species. The reports continued. Food shortages were causing riots. Criminal organizations controlled what used to be human territory, turning former peaceful zones into lawless regions. The quantum network was failing faster now, cutting off entire sectors from communication. Economic systems had collapsed so completely that many worlds had returned to barter. How many species are at risk of extinction? Vexthar asked quietly. 6, Pelra said. Possibly 9 if the current trends continue. Silence filled the chamber. These were not small species, not minor members. These were established civilizations with billions of citizens, cultures thousands of years old, now facing extinction because the systems keeping them alive were breaking down. Emergency Coordinator Silthus spoke next. We have devoted every resource to finding humanity. Fleet Commander Crix has led armadas to every known human colony site. We have found nothing. Nothing? High Magistrate Orn asked. Empty cities stripped clean. Disabled technology that will not function for our species. And messages? Crix pulled up an image. It showed a wall in an abandoned human settlement. Words were painted there in large letters. You wanted us gone. Your wish is granted. Have they left the galaxy? Someone asked. We do not know, Crix admitted. Their jump technology was more advanced than ours. They could be anywhere. Across the council territories, different species were beginning to understand what had been lost. Elder Zin of the Luminary, a peaceful species that had worked closely with humans, addressed his people with tears streaming down his face. We took them for granted, he said in a broadcast watched by millions. They were always there, always helping, always solving problems. We assumed they would always be there. We never thanked them. We never valued them. And now they are gone and we are learning what we lost. War Master Get of the militaristic Krorn made a similar admission. He stood before his war council, warriors who had never known defeat, and told them a hard truth. Our victories over the past century were not entirely our own, he said. Humans were embedded in our forces as tactical advisors. We thought they were learning from us. We were learning from them. They saw patterns we missed. They prevented us from making fatal errors. Now those advisors are gone, and we have lost 3 straight battles against inferior forces. We are making mistakes our ancestors would have been ashamed of. Merchant Prince Velcor, one of the richest beings in the galaxy, watched his fortune crumble. His trade empire had spanned 50 worlds, built on carefully maintained relationships and efficient logistics. He had not realized that humans had been the glue holding it together. Human traders had connected his businesses with local partners. Human logistics experts had optimized his shipping routes. Human negotiators had smoothed over disputes before they became problems. Without them, his empire fell apart in months. Partners stopped trusting each other. Ships got lost or delayed. Small disputes exploded into major conflicts. Velcor sat in his mansion, surrounded by wealth that meant nothing now, and finally understood. He had built his fortune on human competence while treating them like servants. He had never learned their names, never thanked them personally, never saw them as equals. Now he would lose everything because he had been too proud to see the truth. But it was the younger generation that finally forced change. Nim, a young researcher who had studied under Dr. Jiwan years ago, started a movement that spread across council space. He called it Remember the Humans. Nim stood in public squares and spoke about Dr. Jiwan. He told everyone how she had taught him to think differently, to ask better questions, to never give up on impossible problems. He showed them research papers with her name buried in footnotes, her contributions stolen by senior scientists who wanted the credit. She never complained, Nim said. She just kept working. She saved billions of lives and asked for nothing in return except basic respect. We could not even give her that. Young people across the galaxy began sharing their own stories. They talked about human teachers, human co-workers, human friends who had helped them, guided them, believed in them. They demanded the council take responsibility for what had been done. The movement grew. Protests filled the streets of major worlds. The old guard tried to maintain control, but their authority was crumbling. The younger generation had seen the consequences of their elders' pride, and they refused to accept it anymore. Finally, Nim discovered something important. He was reviewing Dr. Jiwan's old research papers, reading them carefully, when he noticed something strange. There were errors in one paper, tiny mistakes that did not match her usual precision. Unless they were not mistakes at all. He worked for weeks decoding the pattern. It was hidden in the molecular structures she had described, numbers that seemed random but were actually coordinates. But when he plugged the coordinates into a navigation system, they led to empty space. Nim brought this to Thren, who was still searching desperately for any clue to humanity's location. She looked at the coordinates and felt something click in her mind. "It is a test," she said. Only someone who truly understood her methods could decode the real location. Someone who actually studied with her, learned from her, respected her work enough to read it carefully. Nim and Thren worked together, applying human mathematical approaches to the problem. It took 3 months, but finally they found it. A second set of coordinates hidden within the first. These led to an uncharted region behind a massive nebula that blocked most sensors. "This could be nothing," Vexim warned. "Or it could be dangerous. Or it could be humanity," Thren said. "We have to try." They took a small diplomatic ship unarmed with only a skeleton crew. If humans were there and did not want to be found, showing up with weapons would destroy any chance of communication. As they approached the nebula, their sensors began picking up unusual readings. Energy signatures, refined metals, artificial structures. Something was there, something big. The nebula was thick, interfering with their navigation. They moved slowly, carefully, and then they emerged on the other side. What they saw made them forget to breathe. A network of planets and space stations spread before them, all connected by transport routes and communication arrays. The construction was recent but sophisticated, more advanced than anything in Council space. Ships moved between the stations, sleek vessels with designs they recognized. "Human designs, Counselor," the pilot said, his voice barely a whisper. "We are being scanned. Multiple sources." "Do not raise shields," Thren ordered. "Send a message on all frequencies. Tell them we come in peace. Tell them we need to talk." They waited in tense silence. Around them, the human civilization stretched across space, thriving, independent, complete. Humanity had not just survived their departure. They had built something new, something better than what they had left behind. 1 year had passed since humanity's departure. Emergency Coordinator Siltha stood before the Galactic Council, with reports that would have seemed impossible just months ago. His voice was grave as he read the numbers. 37 border conflicts have escalated into full warfare. Economic collapse has hit 22 member worlds. Food shortages affect 17 planets. Disease mortality rates have increased 40% across Council space. The Council chamber, once filled with proud, confident voices, was now silent with shock. Chancellor Vexthar no longer dismissed problems with a casual wave. He looked tired, his crystalline body showing cracks from stress. "How did this happen so quickly?" he asked. "It did not happen quickly," Thren said, standing to address the assembly. "It happened over a century. We simply did not notice until now. I request full authorization to investigate humanity's true role in galactic society." This time no one argued. High Magistrate Orn, who had laughed at humanity's departure, now sat silently. He gave his approval with a simple nod. Thren assembled a small team. She chose Vexim, a young researcher known for his honest analysis, and Quarren, a data specialist who could dig through archives others might miss. Together they began the largest investigation in Council history. What they found was devastating. Vexim discovered the infrastructure data first. He ran his analysis 3 times, certain he had made a mistake. But the numbers did not change. "Thren, you need to see this," he said, his voice shaking. He displayed the data on the large screen in their office. Humans maintained 80% of critical infrastructure across Council space. 80%. But they held only 3% of Council positions and received less than 1% of infrastructure funding. "How is that possible?" Thren asked. "They did it quietly," Vexim explained. "They volunteered. They saw problems and fixed them without being asked. They never demanded recognition, so we never gave it. We simply got used to things working." Quarren made another discovery. He had been analyzing conflict data, looking at patterns of warfare over the past century. "Before humans joined the Council, we averaged 120 wars per year," he reported. "After they joined, that number dropped to 77. I thought the decline was due to our improved diplomacy. But look at this." He showed them detailed records of peace negotiations. In nearly every case, there was a human mediator involved, sometimes officially, but usually unofficially. Humans serving as translators, advisors, or neutral observers. They had prevented an average of 43 wars per year simply by being present and willing to listen. "And now," Thren asked, though she already knew, "we are back to pre-human numbers. Wars everywhere." The investigation continued for months. Every discovery was worse than the last. Thren's team found that human agricultural techniques had been feeding 2 billion non-humans across the galaxy. The aliens had adopted these techniques but did not truly understand them. Without human guidance, crop yields were falling. They found that human security forces had been stopping pirate raids, trafficking operations, and border incursions that other species never knew were happening. The criminals had been afraid of humans, now that fear was gone, and crime was exploding across Council space. They found medical records showing human doctors and researchers had made breakthrough after breakthrough, only to have their work stolen and credited to others. Now those same institutions could not maintain the treatments they had claimed to invent. But the most damning evidence came from the Council's own archives. Quarren found files that had been marked confidential and buried deep in secure systems. He showed them to Thren late one night, his hands trembling. The files contained rejected applications. Hundreds of humans applying for leadership positions in the Council. Their qualifications were outstanding, their experience unmatched. Yet every single application had been rejected. The rejection reasons were vague, but reading between the lines, the message was clear. Humans were not welcome in positions of real power. There were also reports that humans had filed over the years. Warnings about systemic problems. Predictions about what would happen if certain issues were not addressed. Every single warning had been ignored or mocked. And every single warning was now coming true. Thren compiled everything into a massive presentation. She requested an emergency full council session. Every member was required to attend. Even those who tried to avoid it were forced to come. The chamber was packed when she began. She did not start with pleasantries or political softening. She simply presented the facts. She showed them the infrastructure data. She showed them the medical breakthroughs. She showed them the prevented wars. She showed them the rejected applications and ignored warnings. She showed them exactly what humanity had been doing for a century, while the Council took credit and gave nothing in return. The chamber was absolutely silent when she finished. Some members sat with heads bowed. Others stared at the data in disbelief. Chancellor Vexthar looked like he might shatter into 1,000 pieces. "We did this," Thren said into the silence. "Every dismissal, every stolen achievement, every rejection. We built a system that used humans completely while giving them nothing. And we convinced ourselves they were somehow lesser. We lied to ourselves so thoroughly that we believed our own lies." High Magistrate Orn tried to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? The evidence was undeniable. "I recommend immediate action," Thren continued. "We must find humanity. We must apologize. We must make things right." "Will they even listen?" someone asked from the back of the chamber. "I do not know," Thren admitted, "but we must try." The Council voted unanimously to authorize a full diplomatic mission. Thren would lead it personally, with full authority to negotiate on the Council's behalf. They gave her the fastest ship, the best crew, and unlimited resources. The mission launched 1 week later. Thren, Vexim, and Quarren were joined by a small team of diplomats and specialists. They traced the exodus routes that humans had taken, following any clues they could find. They found abandoned stations, deactivated beacons, and empty space. Humans had covered their tracks masterfully. Every trail led nowhere. Every clue was a dead end. They searched for 3 months. They traveled to the edges of known space and beyond. They called out on every frequency, sending messages of apology and requests for contact. Nothing came back except silence. Thren stood on the bridge of her ship looking at the star charts. They had explored everything within reasonable range of the human exodus routes. "Where are you?" she whispered to the empty stars. "Counselor," her sensor officer called. "I am detecting something unusual. It might be nothing, but there is a strange energy signature in Sector 47. It does not match any known source." "Show me," Thren said. The signature was faint, almost invisible. It appeared and disappeared randomly, never in the same place twice. "Could it be a navigation error?" Vexham asked. "Or a clue," Thren said. "Set course for the last detected signature. Maximum speed." As they traveled toward the mysterious signal, Thren felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they might find what they were looking for. Behind them, in council space, the galaxy continued its descent into chaos. But Thren was not thinking about that now. She was thinking about what she would say if they found humanity. How do you apologize for a century of systematic disrespect? How do you ask forgiveness for cruelty you did not even notice you were inflicting? She did not know. But she had to try. 6 months had passed since the humans left. Counselor Thren sat in her small office reviewing reports that troubled her deeply. She was a junior member of the council, representing one of the smaller species, and most senior members ignored her concerns. But she could not ignore what she was seeing in the data. Trade routes were failing. Not all at once, but slowly, like a body growing sick. Ships reported navigation errors in sectors that had been perfectly safe for decades. Cargo that should have taken days to deliver now took weeks. Merchants complained about delays they could not explain. Thren scheduled a meeting with Chancellor Vexthar. His office was enormous, designed to make visitors feel small. Crystal pillars rose to a ceiling so high it disappeared in shadow. The Chancellor barely looked up from his work when she entered. "Counselor Thren," he said, his voice like wind chimes. "I have very little time." "What is this about?" "The trade routes, Chancellor. They are becoming unstable. I have documentation showing unstable." Vexthar finally looked at her. "Space itself is unstable. These things happen. Our engineers will fix whatever minor problems exist. But Chancellor, these routes were maintained by humans. Now that they are gone, then we will maintain them ourselves," Vexthar interrupted. "The galaxy does not need humans, Counselor. We managed perfectly well for millions of years before they arrived. We will manage perfectly well now. Is there anything else?" Thren recognized a dismissal. She bowed and left, but she did not stop worrying. Over the following weeks, she continued collecting data. The problems were growing worse, not better. In the medical districts of the station, Dr. Velmon was facing his own crisis. He stood in his laboratory, staring at a patient's test results in confusion. The disease was simple, something that had been curable for decades. But the treatment was not working. "Check the pharmaceutical synthesizer again," he told his assistant. "I've checked it 3 times, doctor. The machine is functioning normally." "Then why is the medicine ineffective?" Velmon pulled up the original formula on his screen. It was listed as discovered by a team of Krell scientists 20 years ago. He began reading the technical details, and slowly, his confusion turned to horror. The formula was written in a way that made no sense according to Krell biochemistry. The approach was completely different from how his species solved medical problems. He searched the archives more carefully and found what he was looking for buried in a footnote. The original research had been done by a human named Dr. Jiwan. The Krell team had published it as their own. Velmon tried to replicate the synthesis process by following the published instructions. It did not work. There were steps missing, details left out. He realized with growing dread that the humans had been maintaining and updating these formulas all along. They had known the published versions were incomplete. They had fixed the problems quietly without making a fuss, just keeping the medicine working. Now they were gone, and the medicine was failing. Across the station, in the communications center, technicians were reporting more failures. The universal translation protocols were glitching. Conversations between different species were becoming confused. Words were being translated incorrectly. Important diplomatic meetings had to be postponed because no one could understand each other properly. Chief Technician Sarix pulled up the maintenance logs. The translation system was incredibly complex, handling thousands of languages and dialects. It required constant updates and adjustments. He scrolled through months of logs and saw the same human names appearing again and again. Small updates, minor fixes, constant careful attention. The last update was 6 months ago, right before the humans left. Sarix tried to make his own updates following the documentation, but the documentation was incomplete. The humans had understood the system in ways that were never fully written down. They had an instinct for it, a feel for how the translation should work. Without that understanding, Sarix could not fix the growing problems. Thren collected all these reports and more. She compiled them into a comprehensive document and requested an emergency session with the full council. This time they could not ignore her so easily. Too many problems were becoming visible. She stood before the council, projecting her data on the large displays. "We are facing a cascade of infrastructure failures," she explained. "Trade routes, medical systems, communication networks, all of them are degrading. These are coincidences," High Magistrate Orn rumbled. "Unrelated problems." "They are not unrelated," Thren said firmly. "They all share one thing in common. They were all maintained by humans." The council chamber grew quieter. Some members were starting to pay attention. "The humans did not simply work in these systems," Thren continued. "They were the foundation of these systems. And we never noticed because they did their work so quietly, so efficiently. We took credit for their achievements and never asked how those achievements were sustained." Chancellor Vexthar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Surely our own experts can handle these matters." "I have consulted with our experts," Thren said. "Engineer Dalmon, head of our Quantum Systems Division, has confirmed that the quantum network is failing. The aliens who installed it, who took credit for designing it, cannot maintain it, because they did not design it. A human named Hyunwoo designed it, and we do not truly understand how it works." "This is absurd," Orn protested. "Humans are primitive. They have been in space for barely a moment. They cannot possibly be so important." "Then explain the medical crisis," Thren challenged. "Explain why diseases we cured decades ago are killing people again. Explain why our ships get lost on routes they have traveled for years. Explain why we cannot understand each other in diplomatic meetings." The council members looked at each other. Some were beginning to realize the scope of the problem. Others still clung to their pride. "What do you propose?" Vexthar asked finally. "We need to contact humanity," Thren said. "We need to ask for their help." "Ask?" Orn made a sound like rocks grinding. "We are the Galactic Council. We do not ask lesser species for help. Then we watch our civilization fall apart," Thren said quietly. "The choice is yours." After hours of debate, the council authorized a limited outreach program. It was not an apology, not even a real request for help. Just a small mission to make contact, to see if humans might be willing to return. Thren volunteered to lead the mission. She took a small ship and a minimal crew. They traveled to the nearest former human colony, a planet called New Sol. The colony had been home to 50,000 humans. The planet itself belonged to a different species, but humans had leased land and built a thriving settlement. When Thren's ship entered orbit, they found nothing. The settlement was gone, not destroyed but carefully dismantled. The buildings had been taken down, the equipment removed. The land was empty, as if humans had never been there at all. Thren's team landed and walked through the empty streets. They found only one thing, a simple sign, planted at what had been the colony's center. It was written in several languages, including the main council trade language. "You wanted us gone. We are gone. Do not look for us." Thren stood looking at that sign for a long time. Around her, the wind blew through empty streets. Somewhere in the distance, a native bird called out. The sound was lonely and sad. She tried 6 more former human colonies. All of them were the same. Empty, clean, gone without a trace. The humans had covered their tracks completely. When Thren returned to the council and reported her findings, the chamber fell silent. For the first time, some of them began to understand. Humanity was not coming back, and without them, the galaxy was starting to break. The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with 1,000 different voices. Beings from across the stars sat in their designated sections, their attention focused on everything except the human standing at the central podium. Ambassador Taman looked out at the assembled representatives with calm, tired eyes. He had prepared this speech for weeks, but he already knew most of them would not listen. Honored members of the council, Taman began, his voice clear and steady. I stand before you today to deliver humanity's final message. After careful consideration, Earth and all human colonies have decided to withdraw from the galactic community. Effective immediately, we will be leaving council space. A few heads turned. Most continued their private conversations. Chancellor Vexthar of the Krell Dominion, a towering being made of living crystal, waved one of his many appendages dismissively. Another human complaint, he muttered to his aide, loud enough for others to hear. They are always so dramatic. High Magistrate Orn of the Silicate Confederacy actually laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Let them go. What have humans ever contributed anyway? They have been here only a century. The galaxy existed for millions of years before them. Taman felt the familiar weight of frustration, but his face showed nothing. He continued reading the prepared statement, detailing the withdrawal procedures and timelines. When he finished, he bowed once formally and left the podium. Not a single member of the council asked him to stay. Not one questioned why humanity had made this choice. As he walked through the long corridors back to the human embassy, Taman remembered the early days. He thought of Dr. Jiwan, the brilliant medical researcher who had worked for 3 years straight to find a cure for the plague of Andromeda. The disease had been killing billions across 12 different species. Alien scientists had given up, calling it impossible to solve. Jiwan had refused to accept that. She had spent countless hours in her laboratory, barely sleeping, barely eating until she found the answer. Taman remembered the celebration that followed. He remembered how the Krell scientists had presented the cure to the council as their own discovery. When Jiwan tried to correct the record, they called her arrogant. They said she was just a junior researcher who had helped with minor aspects of their work. The council believed them. They always believed the older, more established species. Then there was Hyunwoo, the engineer who had designed the quantum stabilizers. 3 star systems had been collapsing, their suns growing unstable. Millions of lives were at risk. The council's top engineers had tried every solution they knew. Nothing worked. Hyunwoo, working alone in a small workshop on Mars, had approached the problem differently. His stabilizers had saved those star systems. The council had given the credit to a silicate engineering firm. They said humans could not possibly understand such advanced concepts. Minji, the diplomat, had spent 5 years mediating the Outer Rim conflicts. Dozens of species had been fighting over territory and resources. Wars raged across 20 planets. Minji had talked to everyone. She had listened to their grievances, understood their fears, found common ground where others saw only differences. She had crafted a peace agreement that everyone could accept. The council praised the Vextalian ambassadors for the peace treaty. They said Minji had only served as a translator. These were not isolated incidents. They happened again and again. Every human achievement was stolen, credited to others, or simply ignored. Every time humans tried to speak up, they were told to be patient, to wait their turn, to understand that they were new to the galactic stage. When humans applied for leadership positions, they were rejected despite having the best qualifications. When they raised concerns about problems they saw coming, they were dismissed as alarmist. Taman reached the embassy and began the final shutdown procedures. Human staff moved quietly through the building, packing equipment, securing files, preparing for departure. There was no anger in their movements, no loud protests. They worked with the same quiet efficiency they had always shown. In orbit above the council headquarters, human ships were gathering. They came from all corners of known space. Colony ships, research vessels, cargo haulers, and defense frigates. Each one loaded with people and possessions ready to leave forever. The aliens who noticed the growing fleet assumed it was just a human military exercise. They paid no real attention. Captain Nari commanded one of the largest colony ships. She stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display as more vessels arrived. "Status report," she said to her crew. "All civilian evacuations complete in Sector 7, reported her first officer. Sectors 8 and 9 will finish within the week." "Good," Nari said. "Once everyone is accounted for, we jump." A young ensign at the communication station looked troubled. "Captain, shouldn't we tell them?" "The council, I mean. Shouldn't we explain why we're leaving?" Nari shook her head. "We tried explaining for 100 years. They never listened. They won't start now. The evacuations continued across the galaxy." Human colonies that had stood for decades were carefully dismantled. Homes were packed up. Farms were harvested one last time. Schools held final classes. Every human settlement in council space began to empty. The aliens barely noticed. A few local species near human colonies asked questions, confused by the sudden departure. Humans gave polite, vague answers and continued packing. Some alien neighbors felt sad to see them go. Humans had been good neighbors, always willing to help, always reliable. But these small voices were lost in the vast indifference of the larger galaxy. 3 months after Taman's announcement, the last human ship prepared to leave council space. It was Taman's own vessel, a modest diplomatic cruiser. He stood on the bridge looking at the view screen. The council headquarters hung in space before him, a massive station glittering with lights from 1,000 worlds. "Ambassador," his pilot said, "we're ready when you are." Taman took a long look at the station. He thought about all the humans who had worked so hard, hoping to be accepted as equals. He thought about the brilliant minds who had solved impossible problems, only to be told they were not good enough. He thought about the quiet dignity with which humans had endured a century of disrespect. "Take us home," he said finally. The ship's engines hummed to life. The jump drive charged, building power. In moments, they would leap across space to join the rest of humanity in their new home, far from the council and its casual cruelty. The station lights grew smaller, dimmer. Then the jump drive engaged and the station vanished. Taman turned away from the view screen. He did not look back. Behind them, in the council chambers, the daily sessions continued as always. Politicians argued, deals were made, power shifted between factions. No one mentioned the humans. No one wondered where they had gone. The galaxy turned as it always had, and the council assumed it always would. The reply came after 30 long minutes of waiting. A calm professional voice spoke in perfect council standard language. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered human sovereign space. State your purpose." Thren stepped forward to the communications panel. "My name is Counselor Thren. With me are Nim and Vexim. We have come to speak with humanity's leadership. We come unarmed and in peace." Another pause. Then the voice said, "You will be escorted to Station Unity. Do not deviate from the prescribed course. Any deviation will be considered hostile." 3 human ships appeared, surrounding them. They were smaller than Thren's diplomatic vessel, but moved with precise coordination. The escort guided them to a massive station orbiting a beautiful blue planet. As they docked, Thren noticed everything. The station was clean, efficient, and bustling with activity. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose and confidence. No one looked downtrodden or defeated. They looked free. Director Deho met them in a simple conference room. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes. Next to him sat Ambassador Taman, the same person who had announced humanity's departure 18 months ago. Taman's expression was unreadable as he looked at the aliens who had once dismissed him. "Counselor Thren," Deho said, gesturing to seats. "We know who you are. We have been monitoring council communications. We know what is happening in your space." "Then you know we need help," Thren said, deciding on direct honesty. "Our civilization is collapsing. Species are dying. We were wrong about humanity. We were wrong about everything." "Yes, you were," Deho said simply. "No anger, just fact. We have come to apologize," Thren continued, "and to ask if there is any way to make things right." Taman spoke for the first time. "You want us to come back? To fix the problems? To save you?" "Yes," Thren admitted. "Why should we?" Taman asked. His voice was not cruel, just curious. "For a century we gave you everything. We solved your problems, maintained your systems, prevented your wars. You took credit for our work and gave us nothing. When we tried to speak up, you silenced us. When we applied for equal positions, you rejected us. You treated us like servants while calling yourselves our betters." Thren had no defense. "You are right. Everything you say is true. And now your civilization is falling apart," Taman continued. "Now you need us, so you come here with apologies. But if we save you, what changes? Do you truly see us differently now? Or do you just need us to fix your problems so you can go back to ignoring us?" The questions cut deep. Thren looked at Nim, who was crying silently. She looked at Vexim, who could not meet the human's eyes. Then she looked back at Deho and Taman. "I cannot speak for all the council," she said. "Many of them still do not understand. They just know things are broken and want them fixed. But some of us have learned. We have seen the evidence of everything you did. We have read the stolen research papers, the rejected applications, the ignored warnings. We know what we took from you, and we are ashamed. Shame is easy, Deho said. What matters is what comes next. I want to show you something, Taman said, standing. Come with us. They walked through the station to a large building at its center. Inside was a museum. Thren and her team entered and immediately felt the weight of history pressing down on them. The museum documented everything. Every human contribution with evidence and documentation. Every time credit was stolen, with the names of those who took it. Every qualified human rejected for positions, with the less qualified aliens who got those positions instead. Every warning ignored with the disasters that followed. There were personal stories too. Dr. Jiwon's account of working for years on the plague cure, only to watch others accept awards for her discovery. Engineer Hyunwoo's notes about being called incompetent by the same people who used his designs. Diplomat Minji's journals, describing the isolation of being respected as a translator but never as a leader. There was a wall listing names. Thousands of names. These are humans who died because the council ignored our safety warnings, Taman explained. Station accidents that could have been prevented. Ship failures we predicted. Medical emergencies where our treatments were rejected because they came from humans. Nim collapsed to his knees, sobbing openly. Vexim stood frozen, his body trembling. Thren walked through the entire museum in silence, reading everything, seeing everything. When she reached the end, she turned to Deho. We did this, she said. All of this. And we convinced ourselves we were the civilized ones. Yes, Deho said. They returned to the conference room. This time more humans were present. Council Representative Sora sat with perfect posture, her face cold and professional. Director Yoonji looked sympathetic but said nothing. Security Chief Taejun watched the aliens with undisguised suspicion. We have discussed your visit, Deho said, and we have a position. Thren waited, barely breathing. Humanity will not return to council space, Sora stated clearly. We will not rejoin your civilization. We will not share our new technologies. We will not come back to maintain your systems. You must fix your own problems. Millions will die, Thren whispered. Millions are already dying, Taejun said harshly. Where was your concern for lives when you were taking credit for our medical discoveries? When you were rejecting our safety recommendations? Taejun, Eunji said softly. She looked at the aliens with sad eyes. Many innocents are suffering. Children who had nothing to do with the council's decisions. Should we punish them for their leaders' failures? If we help, Taejun argued, they learn nothing. The moment the crisis ends, they will go back to treating us as inferiors. We owe them nothing. The humans debated among themselves. Thren and her team sat silently listening. Finally, Taman spoke. Everyone else grew quiet. I was the last to leave council space, he said. I have spent more time among aliens than most humans alive. I do not hate them. But I will not sacrifice human dignity to save them from themselves. He turned to Thren. However, I believe in giving people a chance to prove they have changed. Humanity will offer limited humanitarian aid, but it comes with conditions. What conditions? Thren asked. Sora pulled up a document on the display. First, the council must publicly acknowledge every human contribution over the past century. Every discovery, every innovation, every prevented war. The real history must be taught in every school. Second, Taman continued, formal apologies from every council member who participated in the systematic disrespect of humanity. Not vague statements. Specific apologies for specific actions. Third, Deho said, permanent reforms ensuring equal treatment of all species. No more theft of credit. No more rejecting qualified candidates because of their species. Real equality enforced by law. Fourth, Yoonji added, humans control all aid distribution. No council interference. We will help those who need help, but we will do it our way. And finally, Sora finished, if these conditions are not met fully and publicly within 60 days, humanity walks away forever. No second chances. No negotiations, Thren looked at the terms. They were harsh but fair. She thought about Chancellor Vexthar and High Magistrate Orn. Would they accept these conditions? Would their pride let them admit they were wrong so completely and publicly? I will take this to the council, she said. I will recommend they accept every condition. And if they refuse? Taejun asked. Then billions die, Thren said quietly, and the council will have chosen pride over survival. But I hope they are wiser than that now. Nim stepped forward. I will help, he said. The younger generation will demand these changes. We have already started. We will not let the old guard destroy our future, because they cannot admit they were wrong. Deho nodded slowly. Then there is hope. Not for returning to how things were, but for building something better. Thren and her team returned to council space. She delivered humanity's terms to the full assembly. The debate was fierce. Some members, like Orn, refused to accept the conditions. They called them humiliating, unnecessary, too harsh. But Nim and his movement were ready. Young people from every species packed the council galleries. They chanted and protested. They demanded change. When the old guard tried to maintain control, the younger generation simply removed them from power through peaceful demonstration and political organization. The new council, led by younger members who had worked with humans and knew their value, accepted every condition. They broadcast formal apologies across the galaxy. They commissioned monuments to human contributions. They passed laws ensuring equal treatment. They did everything humanity asked, publicly and completely. 60 days after Thren's return, the first human aid ships arrived in council space. They were led by Dr. Yuna, daughter of Dr. Jiwan, and engineer Minho, son of Hyunwoo. They brought medicine, food, and expertise. They saved millions of lives, but they did not stay. They helped, then left. They returned to human space, to their own civilization. Humanity remained separate, independent, trading and cooperating as equals, but never again becoming the galaxy's overlooked foundation. Years later, Nim traveled to human space as part of a cultural exchange program. He walked through the cities with his guide, a woman named Jihye. The human worlds were beautiful, prosperous, and free. We could have had this, Nim said, looking at the thriving civilization around him.